Welcome back to the Life After College Athletics podcast. Today on the show, we have former collegiate and pro hockey player Jack McNamara. Is it McNamara?
It's McNamara, but close enough.
McNamara. Apologies. Jack played forward and started out his collegiate career at Colgate University. After 2 years of playing university hockey, Jack decided to pursue his dream, playing professionally. He then transferred to Boston College for education and started his professional hockey career overseas. Jack played in 4 different countries, all while building Kickstick. Kickstick was a company aimed at innovating the liquor industry with a double-ended bottle design. Since retiring from hockey and finishing up his degree at Boston College, Jack has been focused on building True, which started out of Kickstick, the better-for-you energy drink. He also has been featured as a guest writer for many entrepreneur and business magazines over the last 8 years. Welcome to the podcast, Jack.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited. Hopefully I can share some insights.
Yeah, we're sure you can. I mean, you've had a pretty interesting path to where you are now, and we're excited to dive into that. If you wouldn't mind starting off giving us a 2-minute drill about yourself, what you're doing now, where you're from, all the above.
Well, I give you guys massive kudos because not many people know about the transition from Kickstick into True. Yeah, you already kind of hit the nail on the head on where I came from and where I went to school. But long story short, every locker room I've been in from the age of 5 to 25 was artificial energy drinks, sugary sports drinks, and naively, I just wanted to create something better. And even more naively, we looked at the industry and saw 5-Hour Energy as just a monopoly in the energy shot space. They were printing money, doing about $1 billion a year, and they own 94% of the market. So essentially jumped right in, moved to Manhattan, participated in 2 accelerator programs. One was called Startup 52, and the next was called FoodX, backed by SOS Ventures. Basically lived that whole entrepreneur lifestyle, slept on a couch in Harlem, then was living in the office in by Wall Street, and basically just building the business day by day, working crazy hours, moved back home, launched a Kickstarter campaign, launched an Indiegogo campaign, begged friends, family, neighbors for money, launched one initial SKU, tasted like tree bark, innovated about 1,000 times, learned how not to build a business from 2015 to 2020, and then eventually launched our lineup of cans, and been building the business ever since. But yeah, we've made all sorts of mistakes. We've had the philosophy of it's okay to make a mistake as long as you don't make the same mistake twice. And we've been growing ever since we launched and kind of adding some really great teammates to the squad. And I think we're in a really good position to do something special. But I'm not an expert in anything, but we can dive into any aspect of the business, and hopefully I can share what to do and what not to do for fundraising, distribution, manufacturing, logistics, whole 9 yards. So
if you don't mind, to give kind of a current snapshot of what True is right now. I know you guys have the energy shots, kind of like you mentioned, competing with 5-Hour Energy, and you have seltzers as well. So how does like the whole product line look today?
well, when we initially launched the shots, we kind of screwed up on a few things. So initially, our package design was really unique. It was kind of like a rectangular prism. Rylan kind of mentioned how it was a double-ended design. It was actually geared towards the liquor industry. And the realization I had was like, I don't want to be in the liquor industry. I want to create something that I really want to consume on a daily basis. So the passion wasn't really behind the project. And we eventually transitioned into shots. So customers didn't really know if it was a liquid, a powder, a tablet. The product didn't taste as well as it should taste. And you guys know, having been athletes, like initially when Power Bar came out, people would consume it even though it tasted like a wafer because it made us perform better. But fast forward 10 years now, every protein bar tastes like glazed donuts, chocolate chip cookies, and fruity cereal. So we realized that we had to make adjustments to our flavor to basically appeal to a mainstream customer. And yeah, it's been a long haul. And now we have that shot lineup. We exclusively sell it online. And in 2020, Polar Beverages, Ralph Crowley, who's the president over there, became a friend. And he just said, hey, if you guys launch these functional shots into 12-ounce beverages, you're right on trend with this functional beverage evolution. And it's something we can help you with. So, staying true to his word, we launched those cans, and he started supporting us from an investment perspective, a distribution perspective, and this month from a manufacturing perspective. That part of the business has become our champion lineup. And now we've been building the seltzer side of the business, county by county, chain by chain, and then supporting those chains at every level from the store manager to the buyer to the distributor to our investors. And like everyone is communicated with consistently and effectively. And I'm a firm believer that the only way you can win this crazy game of beverage is by doing an A+ job in every aspect of the business. So, yeah, as it stands today, we have two lineups. We have 4 SKUs of shots and 7 SKUs of cans, and then we're actually launching an eighth flavor for the can side of the business. And
Hmm.
yeah, growing essentially slowly, efficiently, and effectively.
It's a good product. I've had the fortunate opportunity to try one. I was at an event and they were offering them, and I will say it's interesting because there are plenty of competitors in this space, and I'm sure you know this and aware of this. But you guys, A, I like the design; it's attractive to the consumer, and B, the taste. It's not too like in your face like sparkling water, and the ingredients is super important. At least I noticed it in the food and beverage industry. Like you said, the functional part of it has been a growing industry, and it's people focusing on ingredients rather than amount of calories. I think this goes for all of us. Back then when we were training for athletics, we were just focused on protein intake no matter what the source was. And like you said, protein bars now are just sucralose bars. It's a bunch of fake sugar that they can claim on the label as zero sugar. And so
Yeah,
to have a brand and company that produces whole food and whole ingredient products is super important, and also it tastes good. So
exactly.
kudos to you, and it's a great product.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, if you look at the bar space, we've essentially evolved into candy bars with protein. And I mean, there are a lot of brands that do it well, and you hit the nail on the head. Like when we were playing sports, it was all about protein, and then it became about amino acids, and then it became about creatine, and that started expanding into pantries at home. And now you're looking at probiotics, prebiotics, and I think all those products are truly amazing, and they're at the forefront in changing the game. With the healthy soda revolution, with Olipop and Poppy, and both of those brands are doing an amazing job. But like we're just at the beginning in terms of the different things that we can incorporate into our diets to perform better, which is kind of at the heart of our brand is like, hey, why just have an energy drink? Why not have a sleep drink? Why not have a focus drink? And at the end of the day, it's like, hey, other brands have done it in the supplement space with like Ollie vitamins and how they redesigned the pill format into gummies and did it in a fun, inviting sort of way. We're trying to do the same exact thing with a great tasting beverage that you can enjoy every single sip. So, yeah, despite the amount of innovation in the market, I think that there will be a lot of opportunities. The problem is it is extremely hard to execute different formats, different flavors, different functions. Because at the end of the day, I stand by every single product we've launched and its effectiveness, but it's taken 9 years to get to that point. So, yeah, we've made a lot of mistakes, but yeah, it really comes down to execution, despite how amazing someone's idea might be.
You mentioned how you guys take every single detail to account and make sure that's 100% dialed in. Um, I feel like that's maybe something that a lot of us athletes have realized when you get to a high level and you play at a high level. If you're trying to play in college lacrosse, like if I miss one catch on the field in the game, like I'm pulled. If I let one guy go past me and it was my job the whole week to scout this guy and know the move he's gonna do. If he makes the same move I watched on film in the game, I'm getting pulled, right? So how has kind of that mentality of dialing everything that you do and making sure that things are well taken care of so that you guys can compete at the highest level. Do you think that that's transferred from hockey, or where does that come from?
I think it's a perfect analogy that I've actually never heard before related to business. And it's like, hey, we've all played on teams where, I don't know about you guys, I wasn't always a first liner. So it's like you have to go into college and earn your spot on the fourth line, then the third line, the second line, the first line. And to be honest with you, when I entered Colgate, it was like, hey, battling for that fourth line position. And on any team, the fourth liners have less rope than a first liner does. And the analogy here in business is like, hey, as a startup, if you raise $10,000, $100,000, even $1 million, you're a fourth liner. Like, you're competing against Red Bull, you're competing against C4, you're competing against Bang Energy, you're competing against Ghost, and all these guys have their dancing partners. So I'd almost argue that they're playing in the NHL, the MLB, the NBA, and yet when it comes to like fundraising, like we're still these little fourth line guys potentially playing at like a high school level.
Mm.
The difference is when you start a business and you enter the energy drink game or the probiotic game, you immediately step into the NHL. Like, you need to compete against these guys, and buyers will give people a chance or a tryout. But hey, after 6 months, if you're not selling, you're gone as soon as you get in. And there's an NHL guy who actually once said to me, he was like, hey, it's hard to make it in the NHL. It's harder to stay. And that's another analogy that holds true with any business that you launch. Like, hey, it's easy to start a business, but do you have the foundation? Do you have the execution to really stick around? And each day you have to improve your SOPs, just like you have to hit the gym 3 times a day. So yeah, I would say that the young companies like ourselves have less bandwidth to make mistakes. If we make the same mistake twice, we're going to get pulled. Investors are going to be pissed, and ultimately, I'm going to be out of a job. So I think the obsessiveness nature has to be there, otherwise you'll fail.
That's really good. That's our previous guest, Caleb Fossum. He walked on to play college football at Washington State, then transferred to Nevada. But he talked about as a walk-on, like, you have to earn your spot, and you can't give them one single reason to throw you off the team because they're trying to throw you off every single day. And so you have to find a reason to get your foot in the door, and then find a reason to stay and be irreplaceable. And his analogy was you become the energy guy, the passion guy, the glue that holds the whole team together. And I think that if you can provide such a, and this is my opinion, like speaking out of my butt, right? But like, if you can provide such an awesome product that hits home with so many customers and so many variety, like even the fact that you guys have caffeinated drinks and uncaffeinated drinks, like that's two different people. You know, there's athletes who don't even want to take any caffeine, but now you appeal to both of them, and it's just kind of like a glue product that appeals to everyone, but yet you're niche down enough to where you can grow and have a specific mission.
Yeah, I mean, when we launched True, initially we were just targeting athletes, and a lot of athletes at a high level get their stuff for free. So what kind of market is that at the end of the day to launch a tree bark flavored energy shot that makes you run 1 billion miles an hour? It like doesn't matter, because like you're not going to make any money if it costs money to a college consumer who gets like muscle milk for free or whatever. So we also looked at the market of 5 Hour Energy, and that market is primarily like construction workers, truck drivers who are grabbing it, drinking it, want to stay awake, don't want to have to go to the bathroom for 6 hours. And we were trying to build this new consumer against that. It wasn't until we started looking at our own data and saying, wow, crap, like our consumer is kind of 25 to 35, young working professional, leaning more towards women than lax bro or hockey guy, like whatever. Like, and that's when we started redesigning the brand specifically against that consumer and hiring agencies and individuals who knew that consumer. Because I can't say that I know that consumer as well as someone else would know that consumer. And that's when we started to actually see some real traction. And eventually our goal became like, hey, we should be able to create a product line where if a family were to walk into a grocery store, there is a product for everyone, from the 12-year-old son to the 7-year-old grandmother. And if you look at our product lineup, hopefully that's true. Like we have an immune support product with no caffeine, which is great for all ages. We have a sleep product that skews older because younger people tend not to have sleeping problems as much as the older generation. And then in between, you got energy and focus and power, which the energy drink consumer is kind of right in the middle. So it's great that we have such a wide net. The problem is, how do you really lean into a brand? Because so many brands appeal to like one person or one type of person at one specific age group, and that's a battle that we constantly face. But Liquid IV CEO said it best. He was just like, I want to be a product for everybody, and I don't care what other people have to say. We're going to create a great product, and hopefully everyone loves it, and then they get acquired by Unilever. So I'd like to follow his path.
Liquid IV is good, don't get me wrong, and it's been around for a while, and I know plenty of people, not just athletes, who use it for the classic hangover cure, but found out that it has quite a bit of sugar content in it. It
I,
obviously helps with some of that.
I will say this, and I don't know this guy at all, but he's a former college golfer.
Hmm.
And I was listening to a podcast with him, and apparently they hadn't reached a cumulative $1 million in sales until year 6 in the business.
Wow.
And fast forward, within 10 years, they're doing 100 million plus. So like, try to bridge that 6 to 8, 9, 10 year gap. It's incredible. So I think a lot of people kind of step into the world of food and beverage like myself and expect to be millionaires in the first 2 years. What's the real story? It's like, okay, sleeping on couches, living in a gym for 5 years, getting paid nothing for the first 3 years, working at Equinox in the front desk, and people just ignoring you. It's like that part of the equation people don't really know about, and that's the part that sucks from like an outsider looking in, but I loved every second of it. So you also have to kind of love what you're doing and have you need to kind of be naive to a degree. So I don't even know. That wasn't even a question that I answered. I don't know why I felt the need to say that.
No, it's very helpful, and I think all that context is beneficial to anyone who's listening, whether or not they're in a corporate job and they don't see themselves being an entrepreneur or not. I think a key part that you mentioned was the obsessiveness, and not a lot of people talk about that. I think the word obsessive gets a negative connotation. However, used in the right context and used in the right manner can lead to great success and great opportunity. Because you were obsessive with chasing your dreams of playing as a professional athlete, like you learned a ton of things during that time that you may not have if you didn't even try. So being obsessive can propel you to future opportunities and propel you to that next step.
I would agree that, like from an athletics perspective, the only reason I was able to play like Division 1 hockey and professionally was because of like my obsessive nature in terms of, okay, not just working one time a day, but working out 3 times a day. And to a degree, it actually hurts you because then you start having lower quality reps. You start basically not having great quality of training and maybe not having full energy when you actually go and perform. And I remember, and I ignored him, and I shouldn't have. My coach in Sweden, this was junior hockey before going to Colgate. He saw me working out like the day before a game or the day of the game. He's like, "Hey Jack, you got to relax, man, because I see that you're slower. You got less of a jump in the games." And I ignored it, and I ignored it through Colgate, and I probably ignored it through most of my professional career. And then someone once recently asked me, he's like, "Hey, if you could do it all over again, what would you do differently in college hockey?" And I said, well, I'd probably take a step back and really look at the game, taking a kind of wider view of how I should think about the game, how I should strategically approach it, maybe not go 100 miles an hour and skate slower in certain moments so that you can see the full ice. And he's like, all right, that's pretty cool. Now, what would you do differently in business? And I was like, holy shit, like I'm making the same mistake again. And it's, as a CEO or really any high level executive, I think so many of us will just work 16 hours a day or whatever and ultimately just do busy work. Uh, but I think the real key factor that I need to continue to work on, and everyone should probably work on, is like, it's great to work hard, but you really need to step back and see, is what you're doing valuable to the business? Like, is adjusting the website 1% better really more impactful than reaching out to Whole Foods? Like, and that's where it becomes really, really challenging.
It's something I relate to now with real estate. Like I recently just went full time into real estate investing and basically living off of a lump sum of money, and I have this time frame of, I need to go find deals and hustle that way. So it's like, how do I prioritize my time, because I do have this time frame, like if I don't get deals or I don't get stuff moving, like I will run out of money. And so how do I figure that out, and how do I prioritize stuff? And I find myself, like, I'm such a computer science math guy that, I've built out my model, and I love like tweaking it to make sure that I have this little piece is perfect. And it's like, oh, if I wanted to raise money from 5 LPs, then I can add another sheet, and I'll spend like an hour or 2 hours on that. And it's like, dude, you're supposed to have been cold calling like owners. You in 2 hours, you know how many owners you could cold call? And it's like, even if 1% of those guys picked up and wanted to get a coffee meeting with you, that coffee meeting, who knows, he could have a portfolio of 20 multifamily units that you could buy down the road someday. And instead of you working on your spreadsheet, you could have planted that seed and gone a lot farther. So that's honestly something I struggle with a lot right now too, is how do I utilize my time? And I know we want to talk about this later as well, but it's kind of on topic. Also, just managing, now you're, newly married and spending time with your family. It's like, how do you prioritize the things in the business that will actually move the needle forward, and then also prioritize things in your personal life that move the needle forward there? Because arguably that's going to be your rock when, the business is not doing so well and you need more juice to put in back into the business and get it back where it's going. Your rock is going to come from the personal life. So what are your thoughts on how you balance all of that?
So not to keep using other famous people as my reference points, but Elon Musk, because I listen to so many podcasts, I love hearing about how other operators at a high level think about their life and think about their business. And Elon Musk said, like, you can pick three buckets to do incredibly well. And in my opinion, my buckets are family first, business second, and my health and well-being third. And unfortunately, friends has taken a back seat for me. And I think my good friends accept it and recognize it and just know that this is a point in my life where I'm trying to do something special in business. And hopefully 5 years from now, like, we can still like catch up to how it was before. But it's hard because you really do have to consciously make those decisions. And what may separate our business from some other businesses is every person we bring on, I tell them the same exact thing. I was like, hey, family first. Like, I want you to put your family first, but I want True to be a close second. In other words, and I had this conversation recently with someone on our team, I was like, this is not a 9 to 5 job. It's absolutely not. If something's wrong with your family or you need something to take care of at home, tell me. We'll find a way to bridge the gap. But outside of that, if you're telling me you didn't visit all your stores, or someone on the team requested something from you, the answer is not, hey, I'll do it Monday. The answer is, I will do it today. If not, I'll do it Saturday. And that kind of comes down to, like, yeah, you have to expect a lot from a small business like ourselves, because if we're not doing at the bare minimum what Red Bull is doing, how are we going to compete with 1,000+ employees when we have like 12? And we've hired people from Bang Energy. We've hired people from Red Bull. We've hired people from Celsius. And guess what? A lot of those businesses start at 5 a.m. and they're not done until they visited every single store. So the startups out there who want to jump on beanbags and play ping pong, it's like, hey, like, you just don't really understand how like Beverage works, because Beverage is an incredibly demanding job. And furthermore, when we actually interview people, I tell them, you do not want this job. So, like, don't take it, because if you take it, we will ask a lot, but the hope is that we all make a lot of money at the end of the day. But to answer your initial question, yes, I believe family's first. My wife is absolutely first. not to say I don't work incredibly hard, and then we both go to the gym together. So there's certain areas where you can do things together. Like some trips we'll take together and work together. And she happens to be an amazing entrepreneur. She actually started a luxury loungewear company called 1987, and so it's kind of fun. There's if you find the right partner in life, then they start kind of intermingling in a great way.
Yeah, I think that's huge because kind of going off that story, like my wife is definitely my number one priority in my life now, and she was a college swimmer, and she made it to the Olympic trials twice, and so I think the fact of when you need to take a moment and just say like, hey, like I need to work on the business right now, she gets it, and I love that about her. Like I've always wanted a woman who is strong enough to keep me accountable, but also loving, and a woman who can like raise a family as well. And so like with Morgan, it's like I can work on the business and she's completely understanding in that she sees the value of the hard work and what's like the end goal of stuff, because that's how swimming was for her. um, but then it's also like, hey, you're spending too much time on the business, I'm going to keep you accountable, like you need to keep your priorities in check, you haven't been spending as much time with God, stuff like that. So I think that's super valuable, even just having the guardrails and people who can keep you accountable.
100%. I mean, the person that you end up marrying, and a lot of executives have said this, is like it's the most important decision of your life, because that person is your partner for all things, whether it's going on a vacation or building a business. And I think most of the really, really successful business people out there have an amazing partner. And yeah, thankfully I have a great one. And thankfully you do too.
Yeah, no, I'm super thankful for it, for sure.
To ask about some of your transition into from Kickstart to True, that's not an easy decision to be like, okay, this isn't really what we want to do. What were some of the factors that helped you make that determination that it's time to transition Kickstick into True?
Well, I'm super thick-headed, so it took me a while to realize it. It's like many entrepreneurs are guilty of this. It's like when you come up with an idea, you then start getting advice and ideas from other people on how to innovate. And my brother, who I actually played hockey with at Colgate, who's also in real estate and does very well, he was like, "Hey, I want to start bringing you to some of these networking events," and he would kind of be pitching the business for me. And as soon as I got feedback, I was like, no, but like, what about this? What about this? What about this? And I didn't listen to a damn thing anyone else was saying, because I was like, no, my idea is going to work. It's going to work. And it wasn't until I realized that he was right that things started to change. And as I mentioned before, step one is you got to be passionate about a business where you're sleeping on couches and stuff of that nature. And I wasn't passionate about the liquor space. So that's fault number one. Number two, you got to do your research, and the research behind mini liquor bottles is those are lost leaders for brands. Like, good luck selling a unique mini shot bottle concept or a nip bottle to a business like Absolute or Malibu Rum or whatever, if they're going to have to spend more money on your concept to then lose more money than they're already losing. And that was another problem. Another problem was we manufactured the initial bottles in China, and I found the lowest possible manufacturing cost. And then we manufactured them and the bottles were leaking. And the learning there was, hey, don't, and actually one of the Chinese manufacturers told me this. In China, there's no such thing as a lowest price. There is a lowest price at which point the quality will diminish. And that's something that a lot of people don't learn. And ultimately, it means you're going to have leaking bottles, but you're going to have the cheapest product. And so those three big reasons were the reasons why I started to consider a transition. And then I started looking at the energy shop market as being a viable opportunity. And by the way, I still think it's a massive opportunity, but for anyone who's jumping in that space alongside us, like, do your research, because it's very difficult to create $1 billion market. It's way easier to innovate on an existing $1 billion market. So, yeah, that's kind of the evolution. And then obviously the evolution to add cans versus shots. We were talking to customers, we were talking to buyers, we were talking to investors, and every one of them said, "Hey, we love what you stand for as a brand with True, and like trying not to be artificial, trying not to use preservatives, trying to have great flavor. But I'm not a shot consumer. Like if you launch this in a can, I'll be a customer all day." And we kept hearing this over and over again. And then an angel comes down in the form of Ralph Crowley at Polar. He's like, "Hey, if you do this, we'll actually support you." So, yeah, it takes me a few Easter eggs before I actually start listening, and I think I've become a better listener.
Good. You mentioned something that a lot of people don't recognize, whether they be in business, in any industry like real estate or sales, or they be an entrepreneur. Listening to the market is super important, and you ultimately can find the niche in that market by listening to the market. So, like you said, you found out that, hey, maybe this product isn't going to sell to liquor companies and maybe need to take a different route and produce canned drinks. But that didn't come from you of thinking that. And some people get lucky and are like, oh, I have the next best thing. But you took something and you listened to the market. I'm sure you put out surveys and you jotted down all these notes from all this feedback. Did you have a process in place to keep track of this is how many people are mentioning this aspect?
I mean, we've done it all, and my process initially to launch the shots was actually I reached out to a bunch of different sports dietitians from professional sports teams, and a lot of them didn't respond, but one lady who was incredibly nice, who was the former Boston Red Sox dietitian, ended up meeting with me 3 times for free,
Hmm.
just because she wanted to support me. And the biggest thing about entrepreneurship is like the amount of people that want to help a young entrepreneur is ridiculous. And for me, that was certainly the case and still is. And she basically said, "Hey, here are the products that I feel comfortable giving to my players. Here are the products that are the best selling products on the market. What I would do is look at them and do a cross analysis and see like where do ingredients exist in both, so that you know that it's marketable and then you also know that it's effective." And then from there, we hired a formulation company and they designed the initial concept. And then I started giving those prototypes to former professional athletes. And then I also did a survey of 100 plus athletes, ranging from high schoolers to professional athletes to Olympians, and got their feedback. And the most ironic thing was what those athletes wanted was different than what the dietitians were prescribing. So I realized, okay, we have to find some unique way to bridge this gap. And that's why how we initially aligned on True and this functional first approach. But even then, it's really difficult. Like you could have a great product, you could have a great market, but then you have to do your research at every level. Like, okay, this retailer Whole Foods or this retailer Wegmans or Walmart or whatever, what void are we filling in their set? So like we could have the greatest thing since sliced bread, but if they already have 10 breads, like why would they add you to the list when they already have existing relationships, existing distributors, existing margins that already work for them? So it becomes a like 10-pronged approach to being able to win. And for us, the realization was like, we can't be another energy drink business. If you look at the distributors and their dancing partners, Ghost, Anheuser-Busch, C4, Dr. Pepper Keurig, Celsius, Pepsi, Monster, Coca-Cola. And a lot of times they have exclusive contracts with these guys, or they don't have the appetite to eventually acquire you or the appetite to expand you nationally. So we were like, okay, where's the opportunity? Buy sold for $1.7 billion. Vitamin water sold for like 4 billion plus. Where do they play? And they play in this like enhanced sparkling water set
Hmm.
where there's not a whole lot of innovation. And once we launched, that's the presentation we gave to investors, to buyers, and they were like, okay, I can see this working. And distributors were telling us like, hey, if you were an energy drink, we wouldn't take you, but because you took this different route, now we're interested. So yeah, it's very difficult to win in beverage. We still have a hell of a long way to go, but I do think we're finding that like blue ocean, so to speak, or to find a way to eventually win.
When you're a young, like former college athlete, maybe you're like 23 to, if you played hockey, sometimes you guys are older because you played juniors. But if you're like, let's say in your 20s or 30s and you're trying to figure this life out after college athletics, I think you have to remember like how you got into athletics, and a lot of the time that was reaching out to as many coaches as possible and joining club teams so you can get exposure and playing with all these people. Like I know Rylan and I, when we were playing Denver Elite, like a club team out of Denver with lacrosse, and we met so many people just through playing on that team that has helped us get to where we were at. And you mentioned the lady who was nice enough to meet with you for 3 times for free, and then also all the incubators and programs that you've been a part of. Rylan and I wanted to touch on that and see like how have you utilized people in your network and stepped into different relationships that have allowed you to see the blue ocean and also just propel you forward in your career and make those relationships.
Well, in sports, I've heard this analogy. I've also heard the same thing in entrepreneurship. And it's like described like this: if, as long as you're trying to get 1% better every day, you're going to be very proud of the outcome 1 year from now, 3 years from now, 10 years from now. And I definitely had that approach to hockey, and I definitely have that approach to true and entrepreneurship. And don't get me wrong, I always hope to just have Kylie Jenner post about us organically and then blow up overnight. But like the best athletes are the ones who are ready when that opportunity comes. And one of my best friends growing up, this guy, Mike Condon, just kept improving as a goalie every single year. Like he was great in Pee Wees, then he was great in high school. And then in college, he's battling it out at Princeton for the starting goalie job all 4 years. And then I had a conversation with him, and I remember he's like, I'm gonna go give pro hockey a shot. He's playing the East Coast League, which is the third league, and he's then gets a call up to play. I think it's for the Houston Aeros, which is an AHL organization, which is now defunct. And this was his chance. He dominated, and then from there he leveraged that into a contract with I forget which organization. It might have been the Montreal Canadiens. They start him in Wheeling, West Virginia, and then he moves up to the Hamilton Bulldogs, and then he ends up making it to the Montreal Canadiens. Carey Price gets injured, and he is now the starting goalie for the Montreal Canadiens, gets a contract for the Ottawa Senators, and it's just, he's now retired, but it's a perfect example of someone who wasn't given a billion opportunities to play at the next level, but every time he was given the opportunity, he crushed it. And I think it requires a lot of preparation. So my hope is that when someone does eventually post about us with 1 billion followers, our manufacturing's ready, our fulfillment's ready, our distribution's ready, and we have the knowledge to really expand. And so that's kind of been my philosophy ever since kind of starting this game. And the other thing I would hit on is, in terms of the coaching side, is like my best coach ever in hockey was my parents. My mom was a great tennis player, and she always talked about body language and having a good attitude. And my dad played in the American Hockey League, and he was always kind of showing us how to think about the game with a high level of sports IQ. And eventually you start getting new coaches, and I've had coaches in Sweden, Denmark, Slovakia, Norway. If you just have a vacuum of one little region and one coach, then you're not going to be a balanced player. And the same holds true in entrepreneurship. Like, don't just listen to one CEO or one investor. Like, meet as many as you possibly can in your first 3 years of business. And the best entrepreneurs are the ones who can sift through that data and really decide what is the best option. And you go from making 100 decisions today to Jeff Bezos making one really important decision a day. And so I would say it's really, really important to network your ass off in the first 3 years. But then eventually you have to start learning to say no. And that's kind of the general progression. But yeah, coaching's huge. The right coaching's huger.
So does your mom not like you anymore since you played high school tennis and then you decided to go with hockey?
It wasn't really a choice in the matter. My mom cut me from the high school tennis team twice.
Oh, okay.
So I don't think I was genetically like ready for the tennis game. I don't think any of my brothers really got that ability.
Dang, so she's the only tennis player in the family?
I mean, we all played high school, but yeah, she's the only good tennis player in the family.
Okay. That's funny.
That is funny. Did your dad play hockey then too?
Yeah, he played for the Maine Mariners, and then he played in Sweden as well. And Maine Mariners is a step below the NHL. So, yeah, we grew up in an extremely uh, competitive household, but it was awesome. And yeah, I wouldn't change anything. I obviously played hockey with my older brother at Colgate. My two younger brothers played hockey together at Holy Cross.
Mm.
So we followed each other because I lived in a bunk bed until the age of like 18 with my older brother. So we obviously went to the same place, and the other brothers did the same.
That's awesome.
It seems like all the steps you've taken have, and you even wrote this like that you've taken the road less travel and you prefer that. With the road less traveled, how have you looked at risk and been able to almost be like naive, like we talked about at the beginning of the conversation, of naive enough to make big risk, but also be smart enough to where they're calculated risks? Because I think a lot of people would be like, wow, you got a Division 1 hockey scholarship to play at Colgate. And then you drop that and then you transfer to Boston College and pursue the business. So how have like little steps like that in your life, how have you decided how to make risk? Has it always just been innately in you that you are a risk taker, or how have you looked at that and making decisions in your life?
I don't know. I guess it's kind of a tough question. I do think I inherently think that way in terms of like wanting to do something different than what someone else would do. But really, I view life as an adventure, a culmination of experiences. And um, this is so cliche, but I kind of let my gut dictate the road. Junior hockey was a great example. So I got drafted by the Des Moines Buccaneers in the USHL, which is the best junior hockey league in the US. And I went out and saw the organization. It was an awesome organization, but first practice, kid gets his teeth knocked out. First game, there's 3 fights, and I'm like logically thinking about it. I was like, I already have the opportunity to play at Colgate. They said I could play wherever I want. Where am I going to improve as a hockey player most? Is it going to be in this like fighting league where you can't even fight in college, or is it going to be doing something that no one else really does, which is fly out to Sweden on like a and I had just had hip surgery going to do this opportunity where I'm the only American in the whole league.
Mm.
And I was like, well, that takes a lot of risk, but it's a calculated risk. I'm not going to lose my scholarship, and I'm going to be able to have a really, really unique experience that's going to jump off the page for sports, but also when I go and get a job. And for Colgate, it was the same sort of thing. I kind of looked at it logically and I said, okay, the past 2 years have been unbelievable experiences. I'm very grateful for the opportunity, but I haven't been able to progress the way I had hoped. And that's no fault of anyone but myself. I worked my tail off to try to get opportunities, and maybe it just wasn't the right fit. And I talked to my parents. I was like, I've always wanted to play pro hockey. Um, at this point, I still believed I could play in the NHL by doing something crazy. Um, and they said, okay, you have to still get your degree, but we'll let you do it. I literally flew out to Denmark with just a hockey bag and a small like clothes bag. Didn't make the first two teams. So now I'm sitting on a train in Copenhagen with having dropped a scholarship, haven't made the first two teams, and I'm about to walk home with my tail between my legs type of thing. And once you play pro hockey, there's no going back to college sports.
Mm.
And it was then that I was just like kind of the weight of the world came off my shoulders, and I just decided to play my game. And ironically, my first pro game was against my older brother in a friendly where he had signed a deal in Norway. I scored first shift, signed a contract that night, and then had the opportunity to play in Denmark for a year. I then played in Slovakia, was leading like defenseman in points, took the opportunity to jump over in Norway because the deal was better, and ultimately kind of retired fulfilled, knowing I put it all out there and took every risk that I needed to take, and graduated from Boston College like 3 months later than I would have. Jumped into software sales, hated it. I was like, I'm not going to wait 2 years to make another crazy change, and have been doing this ever since. And ultimately, the way I view entrepreneurship is like, if you're getting 1% better every day, and even if the business ultimately fails, like you're going to be able to step back and say, okay, that's pretty damn good. And I have a lot of faith in myself to be able to get a job elsewhere, but I have more faith in this business and its ability to do something special because of what I've learned, but also because of the team kind of brought around us.
Yeah, that's good. Even if you're like in a corporate job, I think that having the confidence in yourself because you've done the work is super valuable. And I've looked at that also as even working as a software engineer. Like I worked for Oracle for 2.5 years, and even in that industry, a lot of people career hop, especially nowadays. And it's because, I would say personally, now that I don't work there anymore, by the end of that 2.5 years, I had kind of hit my growth stint of Oracle. It's like, dude, I know the processes, I know how we do things here. I kind of need like either a position shift or a team switch, or I need to switch to a new company altogether so I can continue that growth path. And so I think even if you are not an entrepreneur and you're not starting a business, I think that you need to realize where your growth is starting to plateau and then make sure that you make the jump then until you get into a deep rut of like, now I've worked for the company for 50 years and I haven't grown or learned any new skills in the last 40 years, so.
I think you hit on one of the questions I was going to ask, but it's about how all of those new levels have helped you build habits and character traits that allow you to succeed in the position you're at. It's a new devil with every new level, and every new level comes with challenges and road bumps and all of these aspects that are probably unexpected, but everything you did before then gives us confidence. And I think a lot of us take from athletics everything that we did leading up to our college career gave us the confidence to perform at that collegiate level. And then once we got to the collegiate level, it's a smack in the face, but it's a prepared smack in the face. It's one where you hold your chin up and you grin. So we'd love to hear how you've taken a lot of those new levels and the lessons you've learned from those levels.
So crazy story. My dad had like 6 kids in the car, all hockey players, and just raises the question, you 12 and 13-year-olds, if I said you could play Division I college hockey, if all you did was push-ups and sit-ups every night, would you do it? And we all kind of looked at each other and were like, yeah, of course we would do it. And they were like every single day, yeah, every single day. And literally everyone in the car started doing push-ups and sit-ups from that point forward. Every single one played Division I. And it was, it wasn't just like my brothers. It was at least one other kid who ended up playing at Boston College and won a national championship. A team that my older brother's team that my dad coached, I think like 9 of the 10 of them played college hockey, and they're all like 12 years old at that time. It just goes to show you how important it is to have daily consistency of execution to get you in the mindset of winning. And I take that same philosophy into business. Every day I wake up at 5:30 and I start work at 6, and I just start going throughout my day. And at the end of every day, I work out, and I do that with my wife. And it sets a really good schedule for me to be in that mindset of like, hey, if I do this every single day, there's no doubt in my mind I'm going to be a better entrepreneur at the end of the week, at the end of the month, at the end of the year. And I think that really is the key of sports and business. And the more obsessive you can be about it in terms of setting action items and having SOPs and making sure you don't drop the ball is like how you get better and better. It's the same as doing cross train weights and lacrosse, and then with tennis and making yourself the best athlete as possible. It's like just try to be dangerous in every single avenue you can. Michael Jordan philosophy is like make your weaknesses your best part of your game. And Jake, you hit on it earlier. You're already good at setting up all the excels, like get good at cold calling versus someone else might cold call too long and never look at themselves. So the story of all of us. And I just thought that was like, I think that's an important piece of business.
That's really good. It's
Yeah.
almost like your dad knew it wasn't just about the push-ups and sit-ups. It was about how can I get these kids to be disciplined.
Awesome. No, I think that was all super helpful. And for all the listeners out there, it is super great to hear that people who have had these struggles and trials have seen the light on the other side and have built this foundation under them, whether it be friends, family, their own character traits, their own habits that have propelled them forward into these future successes and opportunities. With that being said, we thought it'd be a good time to transition into kind of the last part of our segment, We asked hypothetical questions just at random, and love to hear just your quick answers and thoughts. The first one I have for you: if you had to choose one color, and this color will entail everything that you do, so color of your house, the color of the clothes you wear, the color of your shoes, the color of your car, what color would that be?
One.
White?
Yeah, well, so are their cans. I mean, they just fits the bill.
Fair enough. I like it.
The second one I have for you is if your sheets had to be made of deli meats, like your bed sheets, what meat would you want them to be made of?
He's like, no matter what, it's gross. You might as well have something tasty. I go like, I don't know if you can do this, like a honey turkey or something. Yeah.
Hopefully you smell like honey and not
Choice.
just cold meat.
Exactly. It tastes better.
Yeah, there you go.
If your mattress was made of bread, then what bread are you putting on there? I mean, this is going to tell us a lot about the kind of food you like.
Well, I mean, I love sourdough. I feel like it's also firm, so yeah, sink too hard to go. So that would be nice.
It's a good call. Well, awesome. I'll let Jake wrap us up. Thanks again for your time, Jack. It was great to have you on. Thanks for sharing your story. There's a ton of key pieces to draw from.
Very fun so much.
No, that's
No, that's what we
you're
hope
the
for.
podcast guest. We hope you talk a lot. But yeah, how can people reach out to you if they want to know more about your story or even just follow True and your guys' growth? How can they follow the company and yourself?
I would say follow Drink True. Our website's drinktrue.com. We're Drink True on all the platforms, Instagram, TikTok, which I don't know how to really use, but some of our keep dogs. Twitter, Facebook, all 9 yards. So, and Amazon's probably the best place to purchase us online. Yeah, super excited for the future of True and for what you guys have to do on this podcast.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Thank you. It's always good to talk to athletes who have, like Rylan said, been through the struggles and made it out and are continuing to grow. But it'll be good for the audience just to listen to your story, and so people should take some notes on it. So thanks for coming on, and have a good rest of your weekend.